Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September 9th meeting of the Comox Valley Sewage Commission. And I'd like to acknowledge that our meeting takes place on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. Thank you to staff and commission members who are here today, including Acting Director Blacklock, or Alternate Director Blacklock from Comox. And we shall start our meeting with the resolution status report from September 25th. A motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. Questions or comments? I believe Chris LaRose would like to make some comments on this. And I need the transfer system here. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just briefly, at our agenda review last week, I did indicate a report will be coming forward updating the development cost charges. So if you recall, we had first, second, and third reading of the bylaw amendments earlier this summer, prior to going out for combined engagement with Courtney and Comox with the development community. After that, the town of Comox opted to update some of their projections. So we made the corresponding changes on our end. We had set out to have a good level of consistency between our approaches locally. And then just last week, the city of Courtney decided to make a change as well. And I believe both of these changes are partially in response to the feedback provided at that engagement. So don't have a report for you today, but our intention, if we now have those revised numbers, our consultants are processing them, and we plan to bring forward a recommendation to rescind the earlier first, second, and third reading, and then proceed with a revised bylaw as soon as we can, potentially at next week's board meeting. We don't anticipate these changes to be very significant, but in the interest of consistency with the other municipalities, we think the change is warranted.
Thanks very much, Chris. Any questions or comments from commission members? Any questions or comments related to the resolution status report? And is anyone opposed to receipt? That is carried. And we'll move on to reports. And the first one, the Sewage Management Advisory Committee minutes from August 28th. Motion for receipt, moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. Questions or comments? Anyone opposed? That is carried. And we're noting the update as described on the screen. Item number 2, the site master plan and phase 4 upgrades project update and budget amendment, report dated September 3rd. A motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by McCollum, and over to staff.
Thanks very much, Chair. Chris LaRose, our Senior Manager of Water Wastewater Services, will be introducing this report and able to support the discussion. So, Chris, over to you.
Thank you, James. And through the Chair, I prepared a brief presentation to help walk through this fairly significant report. So yeah, the subject is the site master plan, which has been ongoing for the past year, just over a year, and the associated phase 4 upgrades. So first of all, just a brief refresher on what these pieces are and their significance. So the site master plan is a key input to the stage 3 LWMP, which we're working towards submittal middle of next year. In addition to outlining how we will meet the LWMP treatment objectives for the facility, it also assesses the capacity and the condition of all key infrastructure at the site and recommends improvements to address those. The phase 4 upgrades are the first of a series of phases that will be implemented over the coming decades through to that planning horizon of 2060. So phase 4 is the first, kind of the next phase. It will, the borrowing for this phase of work will be authorized by the approved liquid waste management plan. And in order for that to be the case, we need the submittal of the plan needs to be supported. So when at the the all of the phase 4 scope components were known because a big mass, that's where all of the wastewater first enters the facility and is screened. We knew that the electrical infrastructure is over 40 years old and needs to be upsized and upgraded to satisfy the expanding facility as well as of safety. We knew that the existing admin building needed to be upgraded, as well as the grit removal system and the addition of the ultraviolet treatment system. The additional pieces that have now become clear through all of the additional work that we've done over the past 18 to 24 months are some of which have been addressed recently in reports through the commission, but briefly, the chemically enhanced primary treatment system, or CEPT. So that's part of our effluent treatment upgrades, as well as the addition of a fabric filter, the increase in our outfall capacity. So thankfully that the condition assessment performed earlier this year concluded that we can continue to use that pipe, but we need to increase the capacity to allow us to use it for another 10 to 15 years. We need a new mixed liquor splitter chamber and a reclaimed water system to help us further reduce our use of potable water on the site. We'll also be doing a value engineering process to help ensure that we are delivering as tight and efficient a scope as possible, and undertake some upgrades to one of our bioreactors as a pilot for embedding within the design. And finally, survey and subsurface utility locates. Sorry, Chair.
Excuse me, Chris, could you just explain what we're looking at in the picture there? It may be obvious to some, but I just want to
Sure. Yeah.
clarification on that, please.
That is a rendering of a fabric filter system, similar to the one, albeit a little bit less detailed than we'll actually be receiving. But yeah, so that's there. The fabric filters are like a drum with, it almost looks like carpet, arranged in concentric discs. And they rotate, and the wastewater flows from the outside and then into the center. And then that's the effluent, the stuff that makes it through to the center, and all of the the majority of the TSS, the total suspended solids that are still in the effluent, currently going out into the ocean. They will in the future pass through these fabric filters, and those solids will get hung up on those fabric filters, and then they get periodically brushed off.
Thanks.
Yeah. This plan shows just at a very high level the components that will be touched by the phase 4 upgrades. These are, as you can tell just by immediately looking at it, they are plant wide. On the top left, we have our new, currently there's just the foundation of an old storage building, but that's where our new headworks will go. And you see that dark line coming in through the forest. That's so Charlie's the conveyance project is currently terminates right at that location. It will temporarily come over into the plant and discharge to the existing headworks, but in the future it'll tie into the new headworks up at the top left. And then all the way through the various upgrades in the plant, and then the top right is the effluent storage basin, where we currently have pumps that help push our effluent out into the ocean at high tide, and so that's the part that will be upgraded to provide us additional capacity. And then the various other components. I won't dive into the details today, but it is a very comprehensive upgrade to the facility that's necessary now as the plant approaches 45 years old. So to fund this additional work, this additional engineering work that I've detailed, we are recommending a contract amendment of 2.26 million. So that in addition to the $3.8 million contract that's currently in place would bring us to just over $6 million engineering cost. to bring us through to the issue for tender. And so just a note at the bottom there that where we're tracking in terms of updated cost estimate for the project, these total engineering costs are still tracking well within the industry standard for as a proportion of the total estimated capital. So our next steps are, should you support this direction, we'll be exploring options to continue to explore options to phase or stage the upgrades to minimize the cost impacts. A lot of our work has been to date has been to try and spread these costs out as much as possible. We'll undertake the value engineering workshop to further help to minimize the costs. And note that our current financial plan includes just under $50 million for this project. We are working in the final stages of an updated cost estimate, and we're hoping to bring that to the commission in October or November. And a note that this week we'll be submitting the application to the Strategic Priorities Fund for a $7 million grant. If successful, that will definitely help a bit. And then finally, just a note that the draft site master plan has been shared with the Technical and Public Advisory Committee last week, and we'll be discussing that at their next meeting in November. So that's it for me, but I'm happy to answer any questions about this approach.
Thanks very much, Chris. Questions or comments? Director McCollum.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. There's some really interesting information in here. Now I have one kind of follow-up question around those fabric filters that were highlighted in the earlier slide. Is the intent of that to address like smaller particles like the microplastics and those types of concerns that we're increasingly hearing about?
I'd say the primary intent is to ensure it. So if you recall back to an earlier report this year, the inclusion of the fabric filters and the SEP system are to allow us to defer additional tankage at the facility. So the primary purpose of those fabric filters is to ensure that we meet our regulatory limits for suspended solids in the effluent. But in so doing, that all wastewater over the entire year will go through those filters and significantly reduce the suspended solids, like well below regulatory limits. And in so doing, they will remove a significant level of those microplastics that are kind of attached to or embedded within those suspended solids.
Great, thanks for that. And then the other question I had was just on these two pieces in the slide that's up on the screen. One around the phased approach, and looking at that site plan, we're talking about a significant amount of work, as you pointed out. And I'm curious if there is a broad understanding at this point of how long phasing could be. Like, would we be talking about, a decade of, one piece or another? Or would it be still kind of a medium-term project to see it from start to finish?
So the planning horizon for the site master plan is through to 2060. So there's 3 phases of work that are currently anticipated. So the phase 4, this next one, which will be finished in about 4 years, and then a 20-year and a 40-year type of horizon. So when we talk about phasing, we hope to push, we hope to be able to push as much as possible out to the next phase, so the 20-year phase.
Okay.
That being said, if we're also open to, for example, the outfall. We're trying to push that out as far as we can. That could end up being more on the 10 to 15 year. So as much as possible, we'd like to group them into major upgrades. There's some value to be doing a lot of the scope, as much of the scope as possible together. But yeah, at this point, we're just hoping to push out as much as we can into the future.
Yeah, maximizing what we have in place.
Yes.
And then so that the current financial plan, how much of the overall plan does that currently include? I recognize that number is out of date, but is that for the whole site master plan, or is that for the phases that are to occur in the next 5 years?
Right, yeah, so that 49.8 is what's currently in the plan for this phase 4. So what will be completed within the 5-year plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that number, is it as changeable as how much the engineering costs were, or is it like expected to be an adjustment based more on inflation, or is it also going to be impacted by scope changes?
I'd say it's somewhat proportional to the increase in engineering, but we'll have all of those details in that subsequent report, including implications to municipal requisition and then the average user.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. Chris, it's about 6 months since the commission approved the enhanced treatment that is planned here. I wonder if you might just refresh our memory on the UV treatment, the benefits of that. I'm asking this primarily for public consumption, and because we have had some dialogue in the meantime with interest in the shellfish industry and others, and I think this is basically good news in that regard.
Sure, yeah. So the UV has actually been planned, since the very beginning, even before the LWMP process was initiated. I believe it was 2018. The commission directed us to study that, and so we're very anxious to get that infrastructure in place, and so that the ultraviolet treatment will dramatically reduce the amount of bacteria and viruses that are heading out of the outfall. So that'll be a significant benefit to the ocean receiving environment and particularly the aquaculture interests.
Thanks very much. I don't see any further questions. Oh, Director Blacklock, go ahead, please.
Well, just a question on the phase 4, and forgive me if you guys have covered this before, but is phase 4 also include an extension of the outfall pipe itself?
It was looking like we may have to include the outfall pipe, but we undertook a condition assessment of the existing pipe in February, and the results of that showed that the pipe is in decent shape and strong enough to withstand an increase in pressure. So the only scope related to the outfall that will be included in phase 4 is bigger pumps to add more pressure to that outfall to allow us to handle higher flows during those high tides. Right? So we won't be replacing the pipe until approximately 2040.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that. And we are on receipt. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? That's carried, and we have a recommendation moved by Grant, seconded by McCollum, and this is essentially to amend the financial plan by 2.26 million for these upgrades. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thanks very much. And we'll move on to item number 3, the Greenwood Hudson Trunk Sewer Model and Planning Report. And we have a September 3rd report. Motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. And back over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And again, Chris LaRose will be introducing this report also. Chris.
Thank you, James, through the chair. So again, I've prepared a brief presentation to help walk through this additional significant report. And so this is an update on the outcome of the Greenwood and Hudson Trunk Capacity Servicing Study. So just thought I'd start off with just a brief overview of those trunk lines. So the gravity lines are shown in red on this network, and the remainder of the regional system is all force mains. So this is the gravity network, the extent of the CVRD gravity network. And if you can see the kind of 3 lines coming together in the center there, that's roughly around the airport. And the line to the north, heading up to the north, is the Greenwood, and it heads up to Anderton to tie into the City of Courtenay's Greenwood pump station and force main. And then the section heading off to the left is the Hudson, and that goes over and connects in with Comox and Courtenay. And then the section to the right was pre-existing. So those two, the Hudson and the Greenwood, were built in around 2018. whereas the section to the right was pre-existing and collected wastewater has been collecting wastewater from the base for many years, and a small section of Comox as well. And so this study looked at that entire network, with the exception of the section at the bottom right, which is the main coming over from the town of Comox, the Kai Bay area. So in early last year, we were made aware of new developments in the town of Comox with densities far exceeding those that were included in the original design assumptions for the Hudson Trunk. In the summer of 2024, we initiated some modeling with McElhaney, and the result of that modeling suggested that sections of the Hudson Trunk were not sufficiently sized to handle the full output from those two new developments in Comox. So then last year, in fall 24, we initiated a detailed servicing study to model the capacity of the entire gravity system with our new kind of understanding of projected development densities in the area. So yeah, as I mentioned, the model was for the entire gravity conveyance system down to the CFB Comox pump station. And at that point, it's pumped through a force main to the plant, and those items, that infrastructure was not included in this review. So we worked closely with city and so Courtney and Comox staff to develop future land use and growth projections. This was quite an exercise. It involved numerous meetings. Of course, in parallel with this, both municipalities were working through addressing the implications of Bill 44. So there was a lot of changes happening that needed to be kind of done in parallel and fed into this process. And then the output is the timing of and extent of the required capital improvements based on the new understanding of anticipated flows and developments. So the projected population to be served by this gravity system in 50 years is approximately 39,000 compared to, as you can see, the bar chart. So the current we're about 3,000 or 4,000. And so over the next 50 years, our best guess is that we'll be adding about 33,000 people in that area, all of which will be, regardless of what density the development occurs at, will be using that infrastructure. So some of the key parameters, some of the other key parameters that went into the process were the assumptions on how much sewer flows those people would be generating per capita, how much I&I will be coming into the system, and what our tolerable thresholds in the pipe are. Like, how are we okay with 100% loading, or do we want to model 80%? And the answer to that is it depends on where we are in the system. So the key output, as I mentioned, is an understanding of what infrastructure is needed. So the planning output is expressed in terms of immediate infrastructure needs to meet the known development, infrastructure needs in 20 years, or to meet the 20-year projections, and then the 50-year. So for the immediate, we're not actually looking at much of the pipe needing to be upsized. So you can see it's calling for a new lift station and force main at the low point near McQuinn Road or Hector Road, in that general area, which is the low point. And then upsizing 285 meters of the Hudson Trunk on Knight Road, so approaching the roundabout. And the estimated cost of those pieces that will need to be done fairly immediately is about $9 million. And then to satisfy the 20-year projected growth, we're looking at a more significant chunk of the Hudson Trunk, so 2.5 kilometers, and then an upgrade at that lift station, so upsizing the pumps. And that would be, in today dollars, about another just under $10 million. And then long term, to meet the demands of that full size, 30 plus thousand people. A section of Greenwood trunk will need to be upsized, as well as the remainder of Hudson trunk, and then another upgrade at the pump station. So these are very high levels. So just referring to that note at the bottom there, that the timing is based on projections. Moving forward, we will be very closely monitoring the actual pace of development, and making sure that these projects are within the development cost charge project lists as they come up and as they're needed. So in terms of funding, we have updated, so that we've included the updated costs within the revised DCC study that will be coming forward shortly. Unfortunately, we have not, not having been on our radar until last year, these costs have not been included in the DCC project list to date, so we haven't collected DCC revenue for them. And we do have as you know, a period of intense capital spending for the service. So what our thinking is that to meet the developer timelines, we'll likely need to enter into a front-ending agreement with developers, which basically provides a DCC credit, where they provide that upfront to help get the project going. And then we waive the DCC's equivalent as they develop. And then the balance, because not all of the total $9 million costs would be expected to be covered by those front-ending agreements. The balance would be funded from reserves. Finally, next steps. So should the commission support the report and direction, we will embed the capital improvements within the next financial plan to be partially funded by developers through front-ending agreements. And we'll develop a development cost charge credit policy to help guide development of those front-ending agreements for this project and others. So that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. And we have several questions. We'll start with Director Grant. Okay, and what seat are you? You look like you're seat number 21? 4? All right, there you go.
Thanks. So can you just fill me in a little bit more on the upfronting of the DCCs and how that's going to work? Like, how much are we looking at to upfront the entire amount? And then how does it get paid back? Like, I know you haven't made the plan yet, but I mean, would it be like latecomers? Because they run out after a certain time frame. So I'm just trying to figure out what we're going to put people through that are struggling to build today because of the cost.
Yeah, so it is distinct and separate from latecomers, so that concept. So, and how much would be negotiated through the front end will depend on their phasing. And so the concept is that instead of, if a developer is going to build X number of homes or X number of, multifamily buildings, and they're confident in the first 2, less confident about the subsequent 3, then they may feel comfortable in entering into an agreement where they'll provide their DCCs now, even though they wouldn't normally otherwise be owing until they actually get the building permit or want the building permit for those structures. And then when they do get to that point, they've already paid their DCC. So it allows the local government to get going on a project with cash in hand earlier than if we waited until they, the DCCs trickled in for that project.
Well, you cut out on me and I missed just a little part of that. So are you saying that it would be basically like a DCC charge up front?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's basically the cost they would get.
Yeah, there's no, we're not talking about an additional charge. It's a DCC upfront.
Right, and then they don't have to pay it later. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And we'll go to Director Cole Hamilton.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for this, Chris. I just wanted to get more information on this sort of what happened in 2024 when that sort of large number of additional units we became aware of it. As I understand it, that was to some degree a consequence of the changes by the province or first of all, I guess, was that a consequence of the Bill 44 and associated changes? And if that's the case, are there ways of future proofing to make sure that we don't find ourselves facing, another time in which larger numbers of units are anticipated? I'm just wondering how working to avoid whatever that was. Not saying it was anything that we did that could have been done better, but what lessons we can learn from that sudden change in anticipated use.
Sure. Yeah. So in answer to your first question, no, we're not directly. So Bill 44 has bigger implications to kind of the densification of existing lots. I think this development was more is more a reflection of the changing market here locally and the need for the shift away from single family dwellings. So that densification would likely have happened regardless of the Bill 44, I believe. So in terms of what could be done differently, so you can be sure there has been a lot of discussion between staff over the past year as we've navigated this process, and as we've set the numbers, the inputs that drive the development projections. Initially there was, I would say, fair to say there was a reflexive kind of action, thought to estimate high to ensure that we don't have a repeat of this in the future. But there are significant implications to that in terms of costs. The initial numbers that came back were twice as big, and the infrastructure is twice as large, twice as expensive. And not only is there the potential for inefficiency there in terms of developer money and taxpayer money, but there's also operational impacts of running infrastructure that's too big. So so we have come to the phased approach. We will be monitoring actual pace of development and undertaking reviews periodically and adjusting our phasing. So the way the phased approach works, though, that we have the ability to just accelerate the timing of those upgrades based on the results of those reviews. So yeah, I guess to summarize, we are striking a balance between being conservative in terms of development projections and not overbuilding infrastructure.
Okay, I completely understand. It's a very hard balance to strike, and I like the fact that phasing is going to allow us to be more responsive as if and when conditions change. So it seems to be allows for flexibility there. Okay, great. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for that. And Director McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, my questions kind of center around what is coming up in the not too distant future, just in terms of being able to accommodate, development that's like already in process. Seems to be like, the most important piece that we address immediately. And I do appreciate the approach that, if we find ourselves in this position, that we need a clear plan for the entire piece of infrastructure, not just look at these things kind of piecemeal. So I guess I have two questions on that. It would seem to me that an infrastructure project like this that is completely required in order to accommodate growth, but is not really providing really anything different for existing users, would be the type of project that we would expect to be completely covered by DCCs. Although I'm not sure that that's the case, because the slide before this said that some of it to be covered by reserves, but I wasn't sure if we meant DCC reserves or other reserves that are service funded as well. So I guess that's my first question, is whether or not we intend to cover these projects, both the one in the immediate term and longer further out, through DCCs or a combination of DCCs and our other reserves.
Sure. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a entirely growth-driven project. So so fully 100% eligible for development cost charges. So our intention would be we would aspire to use development cost charge reserves for the project. That being said, we are just now in the process of getting to a point where we are being very proactive with our development cost charges, and with plans to update them. Every time a new cost estimate comes in, we'll be doing a minor amendment to make sure that the costs on the project list are up to date. We'll be doing major updates every 5 years. So moving forward, that's the case. In looking back, that hasn't always been the case. So yeah, we aspire to use development cost charge reserves for this project, but exactly what the funding fraction will be determined in part by how much we're able to negotiate for front ending from the developers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I mean, I think that's a pretty common challenge that we've had in local government, locally and elsewhere. So that's was a helpful answer. And then the other thing that kind of caught my attention here is that, you know, the biggest pressure on this short-term infrastructure needed is, I'm not sure if it's a single development or just in a single zone based on the map, because it's in Comox and I'm not totally familiar with how developments are coming through their system, but it's 2,400 people projected in the next 5 years, which I punched it into my calculator, and that's like a 16% increase in population in a 5-year time period. So I don't know if that's like potentially, or how close they are based on the fact that that's like a pretty short timeline, if that's where that's landing. But I guess my question is then, like, if one of these kind of short-term projects changes substantially, like if that number was to go from 2,400 down to, you know, 500 because of market changes or what have you, like how much does this project need to happen starting now? Or is there some capacity still? I know that we got an update on this a little while ago, but I didn't go back and check like where we're at. Is it at like 85% capacity right now, or more or less than that? Just kind of wondering how much leeway there could be in the timing of initiating this.
Yeah, no, excellent question or topic. So there is existing capacity on Aspen. So if you recall that map that I had up on the screen, the very bottom left branch coming down to right where those developments occur, that's an existing pipe. So that has capacity for about half of the development, although it is just geographically and topologically, you know, a little bit to one side and up. So there is, in answer to your question, there is some capacity there. I mean, in an ideal world, just given where those developments are occurring, we'd have both, and flows, you know, starting in year one would flow to both. If there is a longer build out, projected build out, or market challenges, and we're not able to negotiate a significant upfront component, and we are required to wait, then there are some technical solutions for diverting flows to that existing pipe. So fortunately, there are some options. It's not a situation of needing to you know, not having any of that development proceed without that $9 million investment.
Right. So, okay. You are jogging my memory now that was outlined in the previous report. So thanks for that explanation. And then just one other question, the table that we had outlining the costs of the immediate and 10, 20 year is quite a bit different than in the staff report. Is the staff report got the wrong numbers?
No, so so I chose to display the numbers in today dollars. The table in the staff report, it reflects what's in McElhaney's attachment, and they've presented the dollars in future dollars, which I felt was a little harder to wrap your head around. So for example, the 50-year value was 55 million. Just seeing that value, it seems very high, and it is, but it's in today dollars at 16 million. So that's the difference. Yeah, so it's just easier to compare and scale the scale of the infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, because I couldn't figure out why it was 55 million for something that looked similar to the 20-year. So, okay, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Good discussion. There don't appear to be further questions or comments. So thanks very much, Chris, for all the work on that. Is anyone opposed to receipt? Receipt is carried, and we do have a recommendation that the planning report be approved and the capital improvements as detailed be embedded in the next financial plan, partially funded by developers through funding agreements, and that staff develop a development cost charges credit policy to guide same. Moved by Grant, seconded by McCollum. Any discussion further? All those in favor? And no one is opposed. That's carried unanimously. So we shall move along to our final item of business today, and that's the Comox Valley Sewer Conveyance Project Construction Progress Dashboard. And we have the dashboard dated September 25th. The motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton, and we'll turn it over, I believe, to Charlie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a short update today just to update on the status of the project and to talk about traffic, which I'm sure is on everyone's minds. So some photos from all the different sites. So this is at the Courtney Pump Station. You may have noticed driving past the site that we have finally backfilled the very large hole in the ground, and the exterior concrete of our underground wet well is complete. That second photo on the right there is from inside. We've started to build the interior walls that separate the two different halves of the wet well, and progress is going on inside that concrete box deep underground there. It's going well. At Comox Pump Station, they're pouring this concrete today. So this is the building extension on the east side of the building where our generator will be housed. And so now that we have that concrete poured, we'll be able to get that building enclosed for the winter work. And so we'll have an inside place to work to hopefully mitigate some of the noise of our construction down there from the residents there. And that work is going well as well. So these are two photos from down on Comox Road where we're starting to do the critical tie-ins between the old pipe and the new pipe. And normally when we build a new pipe, we don't connect to our old pipe. But the reason why we're connecting to the old pipe at both the western boundary of IR1, which we call the butterfly area, which is near the vet there, and also down on Bayside Road, is that we currently have an above ground bypass running. You may have seen the pipe running along the road. Now that will be decommissioned at the end of this month, and we'll be sending the sewer from our existing Courtney Pump Station along the existing pipe along Comox Road all the way till the western boundary of IR1. Then it is going to jump into the new pipe through IR1. We can all remember that we made the decision to protect the archaeology by removing the old pipe and putting the new pipe in. And then once we get to Bayside Road, it's going to jump back into the old pipe and head out to the estuary. And that'll be the case for this one last winter while we finish the pump stations. So there's some quite complicated valving and tees that go on at both ends of IR1 there, which is why you may see kind of prolonged effort at both of the ends of the construction zone there. And then once we go into commissioning and we're ready to turn on our new pump station, we're able to turn some valves and send the sewer from the new pump station through the new piping and up Comox Hill all the way to the treatment plant along the new pipe. And here are some photos from Comox Avenue. On the left there, you can see the north side of Comox Ave all fully paved out, and the new sidewalk running along there. And on the right-hand photo, that's the subgrade prep of the southern half of the Rodello roundabout. So that's a very large parcel that's kind of being created by the Providence Health Building. That roundabout is kind of offset down into, and they're building on the Rodello southern half of that roundabout right now. So upcoming milestones. You may have seen some of the media releases about the change in traffic for next week, and that's our one last piece that is at Glen Urquhart Creek. There's a very custom stainless pipe that's going up and over the existing culverts there. So we need to stop the right-hand turn at 17th Street Bridge for one more week to get that custom piece of pipe in there. And then at the end of this month, I mentioned that we're going to be removing that bypass and we're going to be paving out all of Comox Road through IR1. And that will allow us to really clean up that area before Truth and Wreck. on September 30th. And then if the weather gods hold, and we can talk about this a bit more, we have the paving of the Glacier View roundabout set for middle of November, and the paving of the Rodella roundabout for the middle of November. And that would allow us to remove all of the detour route and allow two-way traffic on Comox Road back into Comox. I only have one last slide, and I'm very happy to talk about the traffic. But I did want to kind of refocus everyone back on what the traffic management plan was. And I think everyone is getting to the stage of the project. We're hearing a lot of frustration from everybody. And people are saying, you're so far behind, you're killing us out there. And I want to remind everyone of what the approved traffic management plan was. And it was January to fall of unidirectional traffic from Rodello to 17th Street Bridge. And so we've done a huge amount of work to change that and to optimize that traffic for the people that live on the corridor and the wider community. So the changes that we made were that we changed the construction methodology through IR1 to slip line. That allowed us to start 2.5 months late, the detour. So we started in the middle of March instead of the start of January. And then we staged our work, and we spent a lot of time on the sequencing of that, such that between the middle of March and the middle of May, the folks that live on the corridor in IR1 could travel unimpeded back and forth between Comox Road and the town of Comox, both east and west, up the hill into the town. And then once we switched to our work on the hill, all those folks that live in IR1 were able to live along Comox Road through the farm fields could travel back and forth to the city, which you can still do today, all the way to Bayside Road. There were some little 3-week and 4-week periods where we had to move our closure within IR1. But the amount of work that's gone into optimizing the unidirectional traffic from what the approved traffic management plan is has been huge. And I think it's hard for the community to feel it, but we're staying on schedule, and it's been hugely successful, the amount of minimizing the impacts to those that live on the corridor compared to what the overall plan was. So I don't bring that up today to get any sort of pats on the back. I just want us to make sure that we keep that perspective on what the plan was. We're holding to that plan, and we're just looking for all our directors' support in these final stages to get us over the line. Those roundabouts at the top of Comox Hill are very complicated. They're huge pieces of surface works that we're delivering on behalf of the town, and we can't get that traffic back up eastbound into the town until we can get those roundabouts done. So that's it from me today, but very happy to chat about schedule. I know, Director Grant, you had the initial question at the start. I don't know if that answers your questions, but I know everyone wants an exact date, and I know that we're going into Christmas period, and that there's a lot of functions and a lot of events that are planned, middle of November onwards towards Christmas, and we don't take that lightly. We all know that we get a great October is very different to a really wet October here, and that will really change our ability to bring schedule 2 weeks forward or 2 weeks back. And so we're trying to present the schedule that we've committed to since last year. We're on that schedule, and we're holding weather days in that schedule, but we're not able to commit to anything more at this stage.
Thanks very much, Charlie. And we do have a question from Director Cole Hamilton.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Charlie, for this. It's good to see that news in the update. And I think it's perhaps not as widely understood as it could be in the community that we are on track and things. The projections are very positive for our timeline for the rest of the year. Just looking at the project page on Engage Comox Valley, and it's extremely helpful in terms of current conditions, what's going on now or over the next couple of weeks. But it's not so easy to find, or I don't see anything which sort of sets out the anticipated timeline for the fall. And under if you go to the questions tab, the first 3 questions start with when will. And I think maybe it would be good if we could be more proactive with saying this is what's going on now, but you're all probably wondering like what's happening for the fall. If we could communicate out so people have kind of future expectations, they can plan more accurately for the future, and also would help to demonstrate that we're not behind. It's just a matter of sequencing. I'm just wondering, will there be an update to the Engage Comox Valley project page following today's meeting with this information?
We've been trying to stay away from that, and the
Okay.
reason for that is that the traffic management plan was January to fall, and we're trying to keep fall as our messaging because, for example, Little Red Church wants to run their big Christmas fair on the Remembrance Day weekend, and that's right on the date that we're hoping to have it all paved out. And so if we put a date up there, our community will plan to that date. Unfortunately, the weather and paving projects don't work like that. And so we're trying to, toe that line of keeping people's expectations to a generalized time. And that unfortunately for us is fall. This is our best date we're presenting to you today, and this is obviously public, but we're not putting up on our website November 14th because we can't commit. We're too far out from that. We don't know what's going to happen with the weather. So I think we can look at that website and we can make sure that that fall messaging is there. But unfortunately, when people see a generalized word fall, they get a very hot under the collar as well because fall technically goes to December 21st. So it's a tricky one for us to toe that line. I don't know if Andrew, do you want to say anything more?
I think we're getting close to our termination time here, so I think you've provided an explanation. I'll carry on, Director.
Sorry, just really quickly. I certainly wouldn't expect anything quite as precise as like November 14th, but in the answers to the questions, it says mid-November. So I think we are putting out when answering questions like reasonable timeframes that are not super specific. And I was wondering if it's possible for us to proactively communicate that if we are actually going to put that out into the community through the answers to questions.
Yeah, and I'll add to that synopsis. Mid-November, weather permitting, is in every one of those answers, and so we can definitely look at that, Director.
Okay. Again, wondering if it's possible to put it out proactively rather than.
Yeah, the response is, I believe that you're going to look at that, Charlie. I think that's what you said.
We will.
Okay, sorry if I missed that.
Thanks very much. Good questions, and we're all anxious to see this project completed, but we want to see it completed well. And we appreciate the vagaries of the weather influencing that. So thanks very much for all the work that's going on, both on the public relations front as well as the construction on the ground. And be assured that you have our wholehearted support in finishing this project as determined and according to the schedule and budget that's outlined. So,
thank you.
And with that, this motion is for receipt. Anyone opposed? That's carried. And our final business is to terminate the meeting. Moved by Grant, seconded by Blacklock. Very good. He's in the minutes. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much to staff and to commission members. Just to note that I'll be away the next Sewage Commission meeting, and thank Director Kerr for holding the fort in my absence. Thank you.